Hi, this is Paul with Stand Still Fitness, and we're going to be going over Muscle Energy Techniques by John Gibbons. It's a book designed for physical therapists. It's also very good for chiropractors, for massage therapists, and even some advanced personal trainers. In the book, the chapters that I really liked, Chapter 1 and 2, Anatomical Terminology and Planes of Body Motion. Yes, that information is available everywhere, but Gibbons does a good job of making it concise and helpful. Muscle function, I mean, that stuff is so rudimentary. He could have omitted it. Same thing with chapters 20, 30, chapter 4 and chapter 5. And they're pretty weak chapters, even 6. I mean, the stuff there is very basic. It's well known, and he doesn't really add anything to it. But it really gets good at chapter 7, 8, and 9. And there's a couple pieces in chapter 10. So I'd recommend you kind of read it in a different order, referring to chapters 3, 4, and 5, and 6, only if you need to, because you might get bored reading them. So going on to the book. So anatomical terminology, these are all your major ones, like efferent, inferior, lateral. If you need a handy list of the different terms of anatomy, this list is great, and it's stuff I test my trainers on all the time. The planes of motion, from the coronal plane, the transverse plane, all these different planes. These are things that anybody who works in soft tissue should know, and the diagrams are pretty helpful for this. The muscle and function chapter, I told you to skip this. This just goes over sacromeres and type 1, type 2, blah, blah, blah. Kind of ordinary stuff here. He goes over the benefits of MAT. You can see I summarized that pretty quickly in the review. It works. It's a contract, release, and test methodology. It's a proven method. It works fine. Yes, contract the muscle, provide neural stimulation, and then stretch it by the opposite direction. He gives an example here of the adductor. Then he goes through muscle imbalances and shows the difference between postural and phasic muscles and type 1 and type 2. Again, very, very ordinary stuff here. Core muscle relationships. If you're a physical therapist and don't understand the importance of core muscles to posture, I'd recommend a different line of work. It's very basic again, how this works. And so we're skipping ahead till we get to chapter 7. And this is really where the substance of the book is. You can see both in the written review as well as right here. He goes over most of the major muscle groups, from the trapezius to the scalenes and the latissimus dorsi, so on and so forth. Some of the sections are better than others. The scapular humoral rhythm test is great. If you're not using that test to see for frozen shoulder, you should, and the explanation here is very detailed. There's a video link in my review. The assessment on the levator, the scalenes, and the SEM, these could be better. They're not bad, but I've seen more detailed explanations of how to test these as well as how to strengthen them. They are 3 of the most important neck muscles. You should know how to see for shortness on them as well as strengthen them if you're working with soft tissue work. Flipping through till we get to pec major. This section's pretty weak. There's better tests for pec major problems as well as better techniques for strengthening them. I work with pec major all the time for bench press and other chest exercises. Pec minor and the biceps, same kind of problems. Here we're looking for shoulders that's anterior rotated. There are other better stretching techniques for this too. I like the 90-90 test and the 97 test of the subscapularis, as well as the infraspinatus. I've seen this done in different ways. I really like the way that Gibbons kind of positions the body and explains it. This is really a good section right here. On the lower body, the explanation of the TFL and the IT band is good. Most people don't understand that. The stuff about the calves is useless. If you don't know you need to get your foot to 90 degrees and how to strengthen a calf, I wonder why you're in this field. And he does explain where the soleus engages. Still stuff you should know already. The hip flexion test, classic test. Cook introduced this many, many years ago. Should get to 90 and so on and so forth. Very basic. techniques to strengthen the hamstring by creating engagement. For the IT band and the TFL, he suggests using Ober's test. Ober's test is a kind of de facto standard. As I explained in the video review, the Ober's test is hard to do. I generally will strengthen the IT band and the TFL for most people and kind of treat it as if it is tight, because on most people it is. And doing a little massage therapy or rolling therapy on it usually doesn't hurt anything anyway. The abduction test, 45 degrees is the idea, and then basic butterfly contraction stretch. I like the modified Thompson test. I had never seen it before. It's a great test to find both problems with the rectus femoris. You can see how this test works with the angle that we're going to try to push down, as well as this technique is very, everybody uses this technique, heel to butt, sure. But this version here, where we're pressing up, that works great. I've never seen that, and I'll start using that with my own clients. And then, honestly, this piriformis test is basic. If you don't know where your piriformis is, he gives you each one of the chapters has this really nice diagram, as well as origin, insertion, and what it does. That stuff is great. You can just have a pinpoint reference on any of the muscles. Like if I go to the next one, which is on, I think, the QL. Yes, you can see it tells you where it inserts, it tells you what it does. And this is helpful. I don't really use the nerve much, but I'm sure some people do. His assessment on the QL isn't all that helpful. He admits as much, that it's not a great test. But this stretch right here, this one right over here, that's worth the price of the book alone. I love that stretch. I've been using it. It works great. Excellent stretch that he found. This one I don't find works as well. That other one will work for just about everybody. And then this test for the psoas is really good, as well as the stretch, which he shows here, both the activation and the stretch. Another great example of his work. For rectus spinae, the stretching is pretty basic. Shows the cross press stretch here. I like this measuring technique, is very helpful too. Of course, it could be other things other than the rectus spinae that could stop you from being able to get enough downward motion of your head. Chapter 10, he kind of dumps in all the stuff he didn't put in other places. I'm not sure why this chapter exists, but there are two sections in here that are great. The hip firing pattern test, or hip extension firing pattern test, as well as the abduction test, which he explains right here. Both these tests, you need to know these if you're a personal trainer, physical therapist. They're great tests. They've been proven, and they're easy to work. And it can show you what you need to work in terms of glutes if a person is not firing properly. And the final thing is on the serratus anterior. He explains some of the concepts of winging and how to test for it, but he pretty much admits how to treat it. I don't know what happened there. That was the only thing he didn't explain, and that's actually a pretty common problem for people. You need to basically build up the muscles behind the shoulder, the rear delts, and so on and so forth. And that's it. That is Gibbons' book. Overall, it's a great refresher for a physical therapist, very useful for massage therapists. I think it's best, honestly, for personal trainers who are looking to try to expand their practice, to kind of show how these muscles work and what to look for in terms of shortness. A lot of these tests may or may not be classified as things a personal trainer can't do, but they should at least know about them, and they can refer work out to other physical therapists if they need it. Other than that, it's a nice refresher for maybe a physical therapy office for people who have a physical therapist that they manage. In terms of for the individual person, like a non-therapist or non-trainer, it's a little complicated to read, and I think if you're looking for like a self-treatment book, this really isn't it. As you can see, almost all the stretches require another person to do it with you, and anybody who would be qualified to do these should know these already. So I'm not sure that it's a great resource for that. And to be fair, Gibbons does not suggest that it is intended for, non-clinicians, so to speak. Overall, I had a good time reading it. I'll use some of these techniques for sure, especially some of the stretches on the lower legs. And this has been my review. This is Paul with Stand Still Fitness, signing out.